I had been standing at the taxi stand for quite a long time. The night was slowly creeping in, and the quietness around was growing heavier. My house was far from here, and I kept thinking, if only I could find a passenger going in that direction, it would make things a little easier. A few people did come up and talk to me, but I politely refused because their destinations were nowhere near mine. And at that moment, my entire focus was on one thing. Somehow, I just need to get home tonight. A little more time passed. I looked at my watch. It was exactly midnight. I sighed and thought, all right, let's wait for another half an hour. If I still don't find anyone by then, I'll start walking. But maybe luck was in a generous mood that night, because just 15 minutes later, a stunningly beautiful woman walked up to my taxi and said softly, "I need a ride." I smiled instantly and looked at her from head to toe. She looked like she was somewhere between 35 and 40, but her beauty, it felt like time had just stopped for her. Her presence was soft, delicate, almost fragile, the kind that sends a strange restlessness into your soul the moment you see it. I asked, "Where to?" She told me a location that wasn't even remotely on my route home, but for reasons I couldn't explain, I was already lost in her. Without thinking twice, I agreed, and I told her double the fare. She didn't argue. She agreed instantly. Maybe she, too, wanted to get home quickly through the silence of this night. I opened the door, she got in, and I started the car. Every now and then, I'd sneak a glance at her through the rearview mirror. She was still absorbed in her phone, not paying much attention to anything around her. Just casually, I decided to start a conversation. "So, Mom," I asked, trying to sound light and friendly, "why are you heading towards such a quiet area this late at night? Not many people live around there, right?" The place she had mentioned earlier, it wasn't a fully developed neighborhood. Far apart, there were just a few scattered houses here and there, nothing more. It felt isolated even during the day, let alone at night. She smiled softly and replied, "I don't live there. I was just visiting my sister." That was all she said. I didn't press further. I just slowed the car a little, driving calmly through the silent road. She didn't seem to mind the speed. She stayed focused on her phone, quiet and still. But my eyes, they kept returning to the rearview mirror, again and again. And every time I saw her face, her graceful features, her calm expression, it did something to me. It stirred a storm inside. My wife, Sadia, had been at her parents' house for days. I'd been alone, and now that loneliness had begun to light a fire inside me, one that kept growing hotter and more dangerous. It felt like the devil had slowly taken over my heart and mind. My gaze started slipping, not respectfully, but with something burning behind it. So I leaned in and asked quietly, "Mom, don't you ever feel afraid, traveling alone so late at night?" Again, that gentle smile of hers. "No," she replied. "I've gotten used to it. When your house is in a place like that, coming and going becomes routine." I nodded, pretending to understand, and then, deliberately, I turned off the AC. Within moments, the inside of the car started heating up. Sweat began to trickle down my neck. She shifted slightly and asked, "Why isn't the AC working?" I acted like I was confused too. "I don't know, Mom. Maybe it's broken. It's been giving me trouble the past few days." She said, "In that case, I'll just roll down the window then." I immediately stopped her. "It's not safe out here, ma'am," I said, in a low voice. "This road is too deserted. It's better to keep the windows shut." Then I added gently, "If you want, you can take off your shawl. It might help with the heat." She didn't say anything. Quietly, she removed her shawl and placed it beside her. Then she lifted her hands, gathered her hair, and took a long, deep breath. It was summer, and now that the AC was off, the heat inside the car had started to rise like fire trapped in a box. The moment she took off that shawl, my eyes locked onto her again, like they had found their reward. It was like my thirsty gaze finally found water. She looked divine, like a living portrait of beauty, the kind that could make anyone stop and stare. I kept looking. I couldn't help it. A few more minutes passed. Her clothes were now soaked in sweat. Her skin shimmered, and the way the light caught her figure, it was almost too much. I was sweating too, but the fire burning inside me had nothing to do with the heat. Unable to hold back, I reached over and grabbed a water bottle. "Here, Mom," I said softly. "Have some water. We're almost there now." She quietly took the bottle from my hand, and I made sure my fingers brushed against hers. Her hands, they were so soft, so delicate, like silk. She didn't say a word, just slowly drank from the bottle, sip by sip. Then she poured a little on her head. Her already wet clothes clung to her more now, making her beauty even harder to ignore. And in that very moment, Sadia's face flashed in my mind. My wife. The woman who wasn't beautiful, not to me. She didn't have that elegance, that softness, that charm I had always dreamed of. She was plain, ordinary, simple in every way. And truthfully, I never liked her, not even from the beginning. My mother had forced the marriage. Sadia was her sister's daughter, a match arranged, not chosen. To me, she was just a wife by name. She wasn't the kind of woman I had ever wanted. To be honest, I never liked her, not even in the beginning. My mother had forced me into marrying Sadia because she was my aunt's daughter. For me, Sadia was nothing more than a woman I had been tied to out of family pressure. A wife by name. Not by heart. She never knew how to make me happy. Not even close. In fact, she never really understood me at all. Any time I tried to get close to her, she would get nervous, almost anxious. She'd pull away from me like she was scared. Sometimes, she'd even say no to fulfilling my desires. And slowly, something inside me hardened. My heart turned cold toward her. I started wishing for someone else, someone who could truly satisfy me body and soul. Ever since our marriage, I had started craving beautiful women. Wherever I went, whenever I saw a gorgeous woman, my eyes would just stop on her, like they had a mind of their own. Maybe it was because the beauty, the charm, the warmth I longed for, it was never there in my own home. And now, this woman in the back seat, with youth glowing from every inch of her being, she had completely hijacked my mind. My heart was restless. All I could think was, tonight I want to satisfy this hunger inside me. It had already been a full week since Sadia left for her parents' place, and from what I could tell, she wasn't planning to come back anytime soon. She seemed happier there, in her mother's home, than she ever did in mine. For the past 2 days I'd been calling her, asking her to return, but she kept saying the same thing. I want to stay here a little longer. I stopped pushing after that, because deep down I knew, even if she did come back, nothing would change. She wouldn't make me happy. She didn't love me the way she loved her own family. As I continued driving, I looked back again. That woman was now resting peacefully, her back leaned against the seat, her eyes gently closed. She looked serene. Her beauty was right in front of me, like a temptation sent just for me. Maybe she had dozed off, and in that moment, I saw a chance. A wicked idea slipped into my mind like a shadow. Before we reached her area, I quietly turned the car toward an empty, abandoned taxi stand, a place no one usually passed through at this hour. I parked the car and turned the AC back on, trying to make it look normal. Then, slowly, I left the driver's seat and moved toward the back. The second I did, her eyes opened, full of surprise and concern. She looked straight at me, confused and tense. I quickly placed a finger on her lips and whispered, "Don't worry, you were feeling hot, right? I just fixed the AC." She sat up a little and asked, "But why did you stop the car? We haven't reached my home yet." I smiled, trying to keep my voice low and soft. "I just wanted to spend a little time with you. You're incredibly beautiful. I want tonight to be unforgettable." And with that, I moved closer. My hand reached for her damp clothes. I didn't feel fear. There was no one around. The windows were shut tight. We were surrounded by darkness and silence. I touched the zipper of her shirt, all the while staring into her eyes. She looked straight back at me, not screaming, not fighting. I began to slide her sleeve off her shoulder and pressed my lips gently against her skin. But what happened next completely shocked me, because instead of pushing me away, she pulled me in, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Her grip was firm, her breath was warm, and to my surprise, she seemed even more eager than I was, more restless, more hungry. Before I could even unbutton a thing, she undressed me. Yes, me. Her urgency, her boldness, it was feeding my ego. And for a moment I thought this night was going to be even more beautiful, more unforgettable than I had imagined. She ran her hands slowly across my body, pulling me closer. The small light in the back seat had already been switched off, and in the shadows, she leaned in, opening her purse. I didn't think anything of it at first, but what she pulled out next made the ground vanish beneath me. A large, sharp dagger. She pressed it hard, right against my lower abdomen. The cold blade kissed my skin, and suddenly everything inside me froze. Her eyes, they changed. A red glow flickered within them. Even in the dark, I could see the raw hatred pouring out of her. I panicked, tried to move back, but she grabbed my neck tightly and snarled, "Where are you going? Didn't you want this? Weren't you burning inside with desire? Then fulfill it, properly. Quench both our fires." The pressure of the dagger increased. Pain surged through my gut, and a scream escaped my lips. I cried out, "What the hell are you doing? Put the knife away." But she only laughed, a slow, cold, terrifying laugh. "Come closer," she said. "You love playing with young women, don't you? You thought you'd use my loneliness for your pleasure, didn't you?" She pushed the blade in harder, the sharp edge now cutting into my skin. And I knew. One wrong move, and it would slice right through me. Terror gripped every inch of my body. I quickly backed away. My hand fumbled for the car door, and somehow, in complete panic, I managed to swing it open and tumble out onto the ground. I hit the pavement hard, gasping, but she wasn't done. She stepped out of the car right after me, calmly, confidently. Each of her footsteps sounding heavier than the last. There was a twisted smile on her face, a smile that chilled my bones. She came closer, her voice ice-cold yet laced with rage. "What happened?" she mocked. "Why are you running now? This is just the beginning." "I know men like you too well," she said. "You prey on lonely women, women who are alone, vulnerable. You think we're weak." Before I could react, she lunged. Her dagger slashed again, a clean, brutal strike to the lower part of my stomach. Pain exploded through me. A scream tore through my throat and echoed across the empty night. I stumbled, staggering like a madman across the road, blood pouring down my legs like a broken pipe. She was still behind me, running, fast and furious, like a storm chasing its prey. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid, not one bit. She was fearless, like a woman who had crossed every line of fear a long time ago. I clutched my bleeding stomach with one hand, trying to stop the flow. With the other, I kept pushing myself forward, away from her. But the world was spinning, my body was weakening. My mind, though, it brought me only one face, Sadia, my wife, her quiet voice, her lowered eyes, the way she never raised her tone. Not once. She never yelled, never disrespected me, never even gave a rude reply. She had always stayed silent. Maybe too silent, and maybe now I knew why. Maybe she was tired of me, tired of the way I treated her. But still, I had never, in my entire life, seen a woman like the one now chasing me. This woman had a side I never knew existed, a version of womanhood I had never imagined. I kept running. Somehow, I reached a more crowded part of town. What happened after that? I don't remember. Everything had gone blank. I had blacked out completely. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a hospital bed. The pain in my lower abdomen was still there, dull but constant. Stitches had been placed. The wound had been cleaned and dressed. As I blinked and adjusted to the light, I saw two familiar faces standing beside me, my mother and my wife, Sadia. Both of them had worry written all over their faces, their eyes tired, anxious, and full of silent questions. The moment I realized where I was, I panicked and screamed. But before I could spiral out of control, my mother leaned down and pulled me into her arms, hugging me tightly. Sadia held my hand gently, trying to calm me down. They kept repeating softly, "You're okay now? Everything's all right?" A few seconds passed. My breathing steadied. I looked around again, confused, but slowly beginning to understand the situation. In a trembling voice, I asked, "Who brought me to the hospital?" "How did you even find me here?" My mother replied, "A kind stranger made the call. He said someone had attacked you, and he was bringing you to the hospital. That's when we rushed here right away." She looked exhausted but relieved. "I came here immediately with Sadia," she added. Then she told me, "The police have also recovered your taxi, and they've managed to find some early clues about the woman who attacked you." And then her voice changed slightly. "Son?" she asked softly. "Who was that woman? Why would anyone do something like this to you in the dead of night?" Her eyes were searching for answers. Sadia, too, looked at me, not just with concern, but something else, a quiet suspicion, a storm of questions hiding behind her still unreadable face. I paused, then lied. "She was just some crazy woman," I said. "I thought she needed a ride. I picked her up like I would any passenger, but she suddenly turned violent and attacked me. I have no idea why." I left it at that, a half-truth stitched together with panic. I didn't have the strength to admit anything else. Both of them looked shaken, but they believed me, or at least pretended to. They started praying quietly for my safety, and that's when the police entered the room. The police asked my mother and Sadia to step outside. Then the officer turned to me, his face serious, voice firm, and began taking my official statement. I repeated the same half-truth I had told my family. That woman. She was crazy. I picked her up thinking she needed a ride, and then out of nowhere, she attacked me. But the inspector didn't buy it. He leaned forward, narrowed his eyes and said, "Tell me what really happened. I'm not your mother. I'm not your wife. I'm not going to believe your made-up stories. Who was she? And why did she attack you?" His tone cut straight through me. There was no room left for pretending. Then he dropped the bomb. "We've collected CCTV footage from nearby areas. We've got a clear shot of her face. So don't play games, just tell the truth." I froze. The weight of my guilt, the pain in my body, and now this pressure. It was too much. I broke. In a low, defeated voice, I confessed everything. I lost control. My intentions weren't pure. I tried to take advantage of her because we were alone, but she turned on me. She fought back. The inspector said nothing for a few seconds. Then he opened a folder and placed some photos on the table in front of me. "Is this the woman?" he asked. I nodded immediately, my head hanging low. Shame washed over me. I had no idea how they got her photos, but they had. They knew. The inspector spoke again, and this time his voice carried judgment. "An official FIR has already been filed against her, from your side," he said. "But between you and me, I think you're the real culprit here." His words hit me harder than any knife could. I sat there, stunned, my mouth dry. "In fact," he continued, "this woman has attacked other men before. But let me be clear, she doesn't attack just anyone. She only fights back when a man tries to use her, tries to exploit her. She only teaches a lesson to men whose intentions are filthy," the officer had said. "And whatever the case is, this matter is now going to court. Maybe not today, but sooner or later, we will arrest that woman." With that, the officer turned and walked away, and I was left trembling in fear, because if this case went to trial, everything would come out, not just the attack, but the truth behind it, my truth, my intentions, the kind of man I really was. My bad deeds would no longer stay hidden. The world would know. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped between shame and fear. By evening, I was discharged from the hospital. When I reached home, Sadia broke down in tears. She ran to me, held my hand, and kept apologizing. "You told me to come back, and I didn't," she cried. "If I had returned, maybe you wouldn't have been standing alone at that taxi stand so late at night. Maybe none of this would have happened." She said it all so innocently, as if it was her fault. But inside, I knew the truth. It wasn't her fault, it was mine. All mine. I had wronged her from the very beginning. I still remember our wedding night, the night I rejected her. I looked her in the eyes and told her her body wasn't good enough. I handed her a cream and said, "Use this. Make yourself more womanly." The truth? It wasn't some feminine cream. It was just a skin-lightening lotion, that's all. I'd never really loved her. Not from the heart. I'd never tried to understand her, never tried to accept her. I only ever focused on what she lacked. Maybe that's why she spent more time at her parents' home than with me. Every time she was close to me, I treated her body like an object, like something I owned. I never saw her as a soul, just as a form. I made her feel less than a woman, less than enough. She could never truly open herself up in front of me, not emotionally, not physically, and now she had started drifting away. Her eyes no longer carried that love or respect I once expected from her, that distance between us. It should have made me reflect, but instead, it provoked me even more. It pushed me further into temptation. I started finding more interest in other women, women who had the beauty, the spark, the charm I believed Sadia lacked. The truth was hard to face. I was no longer in love with my wife. I was tired of her. Done. And now I was paying for the choices I made. Now I was suffering the consequences of how I had treated Sadia all along. This punishment, this fear, this disgrace, it was all because of me, because of the way I had handled my marriage, the disrespect I had shown her, the way I reduced her to just a body and never valued the woman she truly was. The case was going to court soon. I didn't know what would happen, but one thing was clear: I was being punished for my actions, and maybe, finally, I was beginning to understand. So before anything else could happen, I went to Sadia and folded my hands in front of her. Tears welled up in my eyes as I said, "Forgive me. I've treated you terribly. I insulted you. I never tried to understand you, and maybe that's why all of this is happening to me now." Without a second of hesitation, Sadia reached out and held my trembling hands. She looked into my eyes and said softly, "I know you've been through something awful, and I know, deep down, all you ever wanted was a beautiful young wife, full of charm and desire, but instead you ended up with someone like me. But that," she added, "isn't my fault. This is the body I was born with. The way I look, it's natural. I didn't choose it, and even if I wanted to change it, I couldn't." "I've spoken to my mother many times," she said quietly. "I told her I wanted to see a doctor, but she always told me that after childbirth, a woman's body changes. She said everything would fall into place. So I've been waiting for that moment. I've been waiting for our baby, and I've been hoping that once that happens, I'll become everything you ever wanted me to be," Sadia said with tears in her eyes, and then she broke down completely. That moment hit me like a wave. I finally realized the kind of pain I had caused her. I had wounded her deeply, in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. What could be more painful for a woman than being told she's not woman enough, especially when it's not her fault at all? I held her close, wrapped my arms around her tightly. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I understand now. I really do. All this time I was wrong. My mind, my thoughts, they were poisoned. A woman's true beauty isn't in her body. It's in her heart, and your heart, Sadia. It's more beautiful than I ever deserved. You've always cared for my mother. You've always stood by me with loyalty. You've taken care of my home, my needs, even when I never cared about yours. That is what makes you truly beautiful." She looked up at me, tears still in her eyes, but now there was a soft smile on her face. She hugged me and said gently, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." But deep down, I wasn't okay, because what she didn't know, what I couldn't bring myself to tell her, was that my real fear had only just begun. The fear of what that woman might say in court, of what the world would find out, of the truth that was still hiding inside me. And soon enough, that day arrived. 1 week later, I had to appear in court. I didn't want Sadia or my mother to be there. I couldn't bear to see their faces if the truth came out. So I told them, firmly, that they didn't need to come with me. This was something I needed to face alone. I reached the courtroom with my lawyer. Minutes later, they brought her in, the same woman I had once tried to overpower. But today, she wasn't silent. She stood there, strong, tears in her eyes, and began to speak. "I lost my husband," she said. "I've been living alone ever since, trying to survive, trying to keep going. But the moment I started working, the moment I stepped out into the world, men began treating me like prey. Wherever I went, men looked at me like I didn't have a soul. They only saw my body, my loneliness, and they tried to rip me apart. I was forced to carry a dagger because I had no choice. Every man who ever looked at me with filth in his eyes, I defended myself." She paused, holding back her tears, and added, "I've been blamed for being alone, for traveling alone, for surviving alone. But tell me, Your Honor, is it a crime for a woman to be alone in this world?" "They tried to violate my dignity," she said, her voice trembling, but firm. "That's why I started carrying a dagger. Every time a man looked at me the wrong way, every time someone tried to use my loneliness, my body, my silence, I struck back. I made sure they'd never forget it. I made sure they'd never try the same with another woman again. I struck them where it hurt their pride, their manhood." The courtroom was silent. She looked around at the faces, her eyes burning through the silence. "People keep asking me, why do you live alone? Why do you travel alone? Why do bad things always happen to you? But today I want to ask you, Your Honor, is it a crime for a woman to live alone? My husband is dead. My parents are gone. My brothers and sisters all have their own lives. I have no choice but to be alone. I work out of necessity. I travel alone out of helplessness. So does that give the wolves of this society the right to rip my dignity apart? She pointed toward me. That taxi driver, he's lucky. He escaped. But if he hadn't, I would have destroyed him so badly. He would have carried the scar for the rest of his life. I didn't attack out of rage. I defended myself because he made the first move. And if this court chooses to punish me, then this court should also punish every man in this society who preys on women like me. Her voice cracked. She stopped speaking. And then she cried, quietly, painfully. And I couldn't hold it in. Tears rolled down my face, not because I was scared of the punishment, but because I finally understood. For days I had been reflecting, feeling regret, drowning in shame, but today I saw the full picture. I saw what kind of woman she was and what kind of man I had become. That's when I stood up. In front of the judge, the lawyers, the entire courtroom, I confessed. I'm guilty, I said. I tried to take advantage of a helpless woman, and she defended herself. She doesn't deserve to be punished. I do. Men like me, we do. When I admitted my crime, she looked at me, surprised, not with hatred, but with something even deeper, forgiveness. She said, men like you, they're not rare. 90% of the men in this society would do the same thing if they had the chance. But if you truly regret it, if you genuinely want to change, then I'm willing to forgive you. Her words silenced the courtroom, and with her forgiveness, the court forgave me too. I was given a second chance, and I returned home. The moment I stepped in, I walked straight to Sadia and held her tightly against my chest. For the first time, not as someone I had to accept, but as someone I was lucky to have. Now I wanted to live differently. I wanted to build a life with her, one rooted in love, respect, and truth. Because sometimes we men mistake physical beauty for real beauty. We chase faces and bodies, while ignoring the hearts that beat with loyalty, sacrifice, and love. Sadia may not have been physically flawless, but the way she had taken care of my home, my mother, and even me, that was true beauty. And the woman I had wronged, she was already carrying the weight of a shattered life. She had already faced enough pain, enough loss. So what right did I have to add to her suffering, to turn my hunger into her destruction? And now I ask you, is every woman who lives alone truly alone? Or is she just strong enough to carry her own burdens? Is it fair that our society makes loneliness a weapon against women? Does a woman not deserve safety just because she has no man by her side? If this is the world we've created, then maybe we haven't built a society of men, but a jungle full of wolves in human skin.